Hello, friends. We are very interested to know which cities you are listening to us from, so quickly like and write in the comments where you are from. Also, share what shocking stories happened in your city or maybe even with you personally. Subscribe because the next story could be about your city or even your personal drama. Now let's dive into a new exciting story. A warm late summer evening softly enveloped Alex Miller's suburban home. The two-story cottage with white walls and a neatly trimmed lawn shone in the rays of the setting sun. From the open windows came the sounds of laughter, the clinking of glasses and unobtrusive jazz, which Layla insisted on turning on instead of the usual rock that Alex loved. Today was a special day, 10 years of their marriage. 10 years, which, as it seemed to Alex, flew by in an instant, leaving behind a trail of memories, plans, and promises. He stood at the grill, flipping sizzling steaks, and looked out at the guests' friends, colleagues, relatives gathered in the backyard. Everything looked perfect, too perfect. Alex straightened the apron with the inscription, "The best husband in the world," a gift from Layla for her last birthday, and glanced at his wife. She was standing at the snack table, laughing at something Jack, his best friend since college, was saying to her. Layla looked stunning. Her dark hair flowed over her shoulders, and her red dress emphasized her graceful figure. Jack, as always, was in his repertoire tall, with light stubble and a charming smile. He whispered something in her ear, and she covered her mouth with her palm, as if holding back laughter. Alex felt a slight pang in his chest, but immediately shrugged it off. It's Jack, his brother in spirit, and Layla is his life. "Hey, Miller, are you going to feed us, or are you just going to stare at your beauty?" One of the colleagues shouted, and the crowd laughed in unison. Alex grinned, pushing away the strange feeling. "Patience, guys. The food is almost ready. If you want a burnt steak, come first." The laughter became louder, and Alex returned to his work, but his gaze again involuntarily slid to Layla. She had already moved away from Jack and was now chatting with Aunt Marge, gesticulating energetically. Everything is as usual. Everything is fine. The evening went on as usual. The guests ate, drank, and danced to an impromptu playlist that one of the friends connected to the speakers. Alex, slightly tired from endless toasts and handshakes, leaned against the porch railing, holding a bottle of beer. He looked at this picture, his house, his life, and felt warmth mixed with some inexplicable melancholy. Maybe it's fatigue. His job as a pilot was exhausting. Endless flights, different time zones, weeks away from home. But Layla was always waiting for him. Always. "A beautiful evening, huh?" The voice of David, Layla's father, pulled him out of his thoughts. Alex turned. David stood nearby, swaying slightly, with a glass of whiskey in his hand. His gray hair was disheveled, and his eyes sparkled a little more than they should have after a couple of sips. David was a pleasant man, tall, with rough features and a good-natured smile, but alcohol had long been his weakness. Layla rarely talked about it, but Alex knew that her childhood passed to the accompaniment of empty bottles and loud quarrels between her parents. "Yes, great," Alex nodded, trying to sound cheerful. "Thank you for coming, David. Layla is glad to see you." David chuckled, took a sip, and stared somewhere to the side. 10 years, Alex. 10 damn years. Do you even understand what this means?" Alex smiled, expecting some kind of drunken toast or joke. "Well, I hope that means I'm doing a good job as a husband so far." David didn't laugh. He slowly turned his head and looked at Alex as if he was seeing him for the first time. His gaze was heavy, almost accusing. "Open your eyes, Guy," he said quietly, but with such force that Alex involuntarily tensed. "Otherwise, you will have to live my life." And she, believe me, was not the sweetest. Alex frowned, trying to understand what the old man was getting at. "What are you talking about, David?" David nodded towards the crowd, to where Layla was standing with Jack again. They moved to the corner of the yard, away from the light of the lanterns, and whispered about something. Jack leaned towards her a little closer than necessary, and Layla smiled the same smile that Alex used to consider his own. "That's what it's about," David said, and turned away, taking another sip. The words hit like a cold wind. Alex froze, looking at Layla and Jack. His heart began to beat faster, but he immediately tried to calm himself down. It doesn't mean anything. They are friends. Just friends. David is drunk and talking nonsense. But for some reason, the old man's words stuck in my head like a thorn. Are you serious? Alex tried to smile, but it came out forced. It's Jack. He's my best friend. And Layla, she would never. David shrugged, looking off into the darkness. I thought so too, a long time ago. And then he stopped, as if he regretted what he had said, and waved his hand. Okay, forget it. This is your holiday. Enjoy. He patted Alex on the shoulder and walked away to the drinks table, leaving him alone with his thoughts buzzing. Alex finished his beer in one long gulp, trying to push away his anxiety. This is nonsense. Drunken delirium. But the gaze fell again on Layla and Jack, and now their intimacy seemed less innocent. The party began to die down around midnight. The guests left, leaving behind empty plates and crumpled napkins. Alex helped Layla clear the table while the last of their friends said goodbye on the porch. Jack was one of the last to leave, hugging Layla a little longer than usual and patting Alex on the back. Great evening, brother. You and Layla are the best couple I know, he said with his usual smile. Thank you, Jack. I'm glad I came, Alex answered, but his voice sounded colder than he intended. Jack left and Layla closed the door and turned to Alex, beaming with a smile. Well, hero of the evening, how do you like our little anniversary? She came closer, wrapped her arms around his neck, and pressed herself against him. Her smell, a mixture of perfume and wine, was so familiar, so familiar. Great. You're great. You organized everything perfectly, he said, forcing himself to smile. She tilted her head, looking at him with slight mockery. You're kind of thoughtful. Tired? Yes, probably. Long day, he lied, looking away. Layla pulled him towards her and kissed him softly, but with a hint. Maybe we can continue the holiday. Just you and me? She whispered, and there was a playful note in her voice. Alex felt his body respond to her closeness, but David's words popped up in his head again. Open your eyes. He pulled away gently, trying not to show his confusion. Lay, I'm really exhausted. Let's go tomorrow, he said, hoping she wouldn't notice his tension. She pouted, but then laughed. Okay, old grump. But tomorrow you're mine, okay? We agreed, he nodded, forcing a smile. Layla went upstairs, and Alex remained downstairs, looking at the empty living room. The silence was oppressive. He went to the window and looked out into the courtyard, where life had recently been in full swing. Everything was so good. That's right. But now something has changed. He couldn't explain it, but David's words, Layla's look, Jack's laughter, all of this was mixed up in his head like a bad dream. Alex Miller loved Layla with all his soul. 10 years ago, he stood on one knee in front of her, vowed to be there through thick and thin, made plans for children, future. He allowed these feelings to guide him, turning a blind eye to little things that might alarm him. But now he realized that somewhere along the way he had missed something important. And perhaps the people closest to him have long ago stabbed him in the back. He took out his phone, opened his contacts, and froze, looking at Jack's name. Then he turned his gaze to the sleeping house, where Layla was probably already covered with a blanket. And for the first time in 10 years, Alex's mind took precedence over his love for Layla. Alex lay in the darkness of the bedroom, staring at the ceiling. Nearby, under a thin blanket, Layla was quietly snoring. Her breathing was even, calm the way he was used to hearing it after long flights, when he returned home and fell asleep hugging her. But today, this silence was not reassuring. It cut into his ears like a knife, reminding him that he no longer felt safe in his own home. He turned over on his side, trying to find a comfortable position, but his body did not obey. My thoughts were spinning like a plane in a zone of turbulence. David's words, "Open your eyes," sounded in my head like a broken record. Alex clenched his fists, trying to drive them away, but they returned, clinging to every corner of his consciousness. He didn't want to believe it. I couldn't. Layla was his anchor, his ground after endless hours in the sky. And Jack was the one who was always there. But now it all seemed unsteady, like a mirage. The clock on the nightstand showed 2:17. Alex stood up quietly, trying not to wake Layla, and went downstairs. The living room still smelled of grill smoke and spilled wine. He walked to the sofa, collapsed on it, and rubbed his temples. He should have drunk water, but instead he reached for a bottle of bourbon left by one of the guests. He poured himself half a glass and took a sip. I'm going crazy, he thought, looking at the dark TV screen. This is just the drunken chatter of an old man, nothing more. But Layla's face came to mind, her smile when she whispered with Jack. Her hand inadvertently touched his shoulder. Alex had always considered himself observant in the cockpit. This was his main quality. He noticed the slightest changes in the instruments and felt every gust of wind. Why didn't he see anything here in his life? He finished his bourbon and set the glass down on the table with a thud. We need to talk to her. In the morning, ask directly. But what will he say? Hey, Lay, are you by any chance having an affair with my best friend? Just the thought of it made him nauseous. She will look at him with her big brown eyes, full of resentment, and say that he is crazy. Alex stood up, went to the window, and parted the curtains. The street was empty, illuminated only by the dim light of street lamps. He remembered how he and Layla chose this house. She liked the small garden at the back, and he liked the spacious garage where he could tinker with the car on rare days off. Then they were happy. They made plans, children, travel, cozy evenings by the fireplace. But the children never appeared. At first they put it off, he flew too much, she wanted to prepare the nest. Then the doctors said that Layla had problems and that there was little chance. She cried at night, and he hugged her, whispered that everything would be fine, that they would have enough of each other. And he believed it. I believed it until today. He returned to the sofa, took the phone, and opened the gallery. I scrolled through the photos. Layla on the beach in Mexico, her hair blowing in the wind, the two of them at their parents' Christmas. She laughs while holding his 35th birthday cake. In all the pictures, she looked so sincere, so his. But now he looked at these shots and looked for a catch. Was that smile real? Or did he just want to see her like this? The door upstairs creaked. Alex shuddered, quickly turned off the screen and listened. Light steps up the stairs. Layla appeared in the living room, wrapped in his old plaid shirt that she liked to wear around the house. Her hair was disheveled and her eyes were slightly puffy from sleep. Alex, why aren't you sleeping? Her voice was soft, slightly hoarse. He forced himself to smile, hiding the phone behind his back. I can't sleep. I decided to sit here for a while. She came closer, sat down next to him, and laid her head on his shoulder. You're kind of strange today. Everything is fine? Her warmth, her smell, it was all so familiar, so expensive. He wanted to hug her, hold her close, and forget about everything. But instead he asked, Lay, are you happy with me? She raised her head and looked at him in surprise. What kind of question? Of course I'm happy. And you? Yes, he hesitated, feeling the words get stuck in his throat. I was just thinking. 10 years is a long time. I want you to feel good. Layla smiled and stroked his hair. You're stupid, Miller. I feel better with you than anywhere else. Go to bed, okay? Tomorrow is a day off. We can lie around until lunch. She stood up and pulled his hand. Alex stood up, but the heaviness in his chest did not go away. He watched her walk towards the stairs, and for the first time noticed that her gait changed a little. It became easier, more confident. Or did he imagine it? Lay, he called when she was already halfway to the bedroom. She turned around, standing on the step. You would have told me if something was wrong, right? She froze for a second, then nodded. Certainly. Sleep, Alex. You're overtired. She left, and he remained standing, looking after her. Her answer sounded sincere, but why then did he feel that she was lying? Monday morning burst into Alex's life with the mercilessness of a runway before a flight. He woke up to the sound of his alarm clock, as sharp as a cockpit alarm. Layla was still sleeping, her face buried in the pillow. Her breathing was quiet and even. Alex looked at her for a second, feeling love and suspicion fighting inside, but then stood up, not giving himself time to think. He was tired of unanswered questions. Today, he will find a way to get them. In the kitchen, he made coffee black without sugar, like he drank before long flights. Layla came down half an hour later, already dressed in a light dress, with her hair damp after the shower. She smiled, reaching for her cup. "You're early today." "Flight?" she asked, sitting down at the table. "No, business in the city," he answered, avoiding her gaze. "I'll be back for lunch." "Fine. Maybe we can order pizza tonight." Her voice was light, almost carefree. "We'll see," he muttered, putting the mug in the sink. She shrugged, not noticing or pretending not to notice his coldness. Alex grabbed the keys and walked out to the pickup. The morning was cool, with a light fog hanging over the lawns. He started the engine and drove, not into the city, as he said, but in the opposite direction to where, according to rumors, a man who could give him the truth worked. The detective's office was in an old building on the outskirts, sandwiched between an auto repair shop and a diner with a neon sign that said Food 24/7. The sign above the door read Robert Kane Private Investigations, but the paint was peeling and the letters seemed faded, like old memories. Alex parked, glanced at the cloudy window with frayed blinds, and entered. The inside smelled of cigarette smoke and cheap coffee. The room was cramped. A shabby sofa littered with folders, a metal table with a typewriter, and a couple of chairs, one of which creaked with every movement. A man of about 50 was sitting at the table balding, with bushy eyebrows and a scar crossing his left cheekbone. He looked up from the newspaper he was reading and nodded to Alex. "How can I help?" Kane's voice was hoarse, as if he smoked too much and slept too little. Alex sat down on the chair, feeling it creak in protest under his weight. "I need you to check on someone," he said, trying to speak evenly, although everything was boiling inside. Kane put down the newspaper and pulled out a notepad and pen from the drawer. "Name, details, what are you waiting for?" "Post it." Alex hesitated, looking at his hands. Saying it out loud was harder than he thought. "My wife, Layla Miller, and my friend, Jack Harris. I want to know if there is something between them." Kane narrowed his eyes and tapped his pen on the table. "Treason, then. Classic. What gave you the idea?" Alex clenched his fists, remembering the party, David's words, the whispers in the corner. "Just suspicions. They communicate too closely. I want to be sure." "Are you sure they're not sleeping, or are you sure they're sleeping?" Kane grinned, but his eyes remained cold. "Just find out," Alex snapped, feeling his cheeks burn. Kane nodded and wrote something down on his notepad. "Okay. Addresses, habits, schedules, everything you know. The more you give, the faster I work." Alex told what he could, where Layla lives, where Jack works a manager at a car dealership in the city center, how often he himself goes on flights. Kane listened, nodding, sometimes throwing short questions. "Is she often alone at home? Does he come to you without calling?" The questions were simple, but each one drove the needle deeper into Alex's heart. "How long will it take?" he asked when he finished. "A week, maybe 2. Depends how careful they are." Kane shrugged. "If there is something, I will find it. Photos, notes, everything is as it should be. 500 in advance, the rest after." Alex took out his wallet and counted out the money cash he had withdrawn last week to repair his car. He handed them to Kane, feeling his fingers tremble. "That doesn't mean I don't trust her," he said, as if making excuses. "I just want to know." Kane took the money and put it in the drawer without counting it. "Everyone says so, boy. Don't worry, I'm not a judge. My job is to dig, not to read morals." Alex nodded and stood up, but turned around at the door. "If you don't find anything, that's also a result, right?" Kane grinned, revealing yellowish teeth. "Certainly. But you know what's funny? Those who come to me usually already know the answer. They just want me to voice it." These words hit like a shot. Alex left, slamming the door a little harder than necessary. On the street, he lit a cigarette. The cigarette trembled in his fingers, The smoke obscured his eyes. He got into the car, but didn't start it. He just sat there, looking at the peeling sign. Kane was right. Somewhere deep inside, he already felt the truth. When he returned home, Layla was sitting on the sofa with her laptop, scrolling through something on the internet. She raised her head and smiled. "Hurry up. Shall we still order pizza?" "Yes, go ahead," he replied, throwing the keys on the table. She stood up, walked up to him, hugged him from behind, pressing her cheek to his back. "You're kind of tense." "Tired?" "A little," he lied, feeling her warmth through his jacket. "Then rest. I'll order it with pepperoni, your favorite." She let him go and went to the phone. Alex watched her leave, listening to her chatting with the pizzeria operator. Her voice was so familiar, so familiar. But now there was an echo in it, subtle, barely perceptible, like the noise in headphones before takeoff. He didn't know what Kane would find. But he knew one thing: this noise could no longer be drowned out. A week has passed since the anniversary party, but David's words, "Open your eyes, otherwise you will live my life," crashed into Alex's mind like a storm warning before a flight. He could no longer endure this rotting uncertainty. Layla behaved as usual. She cooked breakfast, smiled, kissed him before bed. But her every gesture now seemed to him like a performance, and every glance like a mask. The detective he hired promised first results soon, but Alex didn't want to wait like a passenger in the waiting area. He needed David. The person who saw the truth had to voice it. On Saturday morning, Layla went to the market. She loved to wander between the stalls, choosing spices and herbs, calling it her little ritual. Alex waited until her old Honda pulled out of the yard and dialed his father-in-law's number. "Alex, why the hell are you calling so early?" David's voice was rough, but with a warm note. "I can't sleep. Shall we go fishing?" Alex asked, trying to sound casual. David chuckled, paused, then said, "Fishing is good." An hour later at the old pier. "Coming." Alex dropped the call and went to get ready. He pulled out the fishing rods from the garage, worn, with peeling paint on the reels, bought with David in the first year of marriage. "I put a box of hooks and bait, a couple of cans of beer, and a thermos of pitch-black coffee in the back of my pickup truck." The lake was their place, a shore overgrown with reeds, an old pier creaking under their feet, and water in which the pine trees were reflected. There they fished, drank beer, and were silent about what was gnawing at them from the inside. David was already waiting when Alex arrived. He stood by the pier, wearing a faded plaid shirt and an old cap pushed back on his head. Nearby lay a bag of fishing rods and a bottle of whiskey, glistening in the morning light. He turned around, noticing the pickup truck, and waved his hand. "Late, Miller. I thought Layla put you on the stove," he shouted with a grin. Alex got out of the car, slammed the door, and walked over, carrying the gear. "She's at the market. There is an hour until he returns." "An hour is almost an eternity." David nodded towards the water, where a light wind was blowing ripples. "Cast it, there should be a bite today." They laid out their fishing rods, cast out their lines, and sat on the edge of the pier, their legs dangling over the water. The sun rose above the pine trees, casting long shadows on the lake. Alex opened the thermos, poured coffee into the lid, and handed it to David. "Black, just the way you like it." David took the coffee, took a sip, and winced. "Damn, is it possible that sobriety is shining on me now?" He grinned, but his gaze quickly became serious. "Okay, spit it out. You didn't come here for fish." Alex looked at the float rocking on the waves and felt his throat tighten. But he could not remain silent any longer. "At the party you told me to open my eyes, said I could live your life." And he looked at Layla and Jack. "What do you know?" David put the coffee on the boards and rubbed his neck, as if unloading a weight. Then he spoke, looking at the water. "I didn't mean to drag you in, boy. But since you're here, a couple of weeks ago I was at home in the workshop, fixing an old table that Layla asked me to pick up. Martha was yelling at her on the phone. I heard through the wall. She screamed, 'You're a fool, you listened to this, Jack. You did this damned procedure. Now you're crying that you've deprived yourself of children, and I've deprived you of grandchildren.' Then Layla arrived. eyes in tears, hands trembling. I asked what was wrong, and she waved it off, saying it was nothing, just nerves. Alex felt the blood pounding in his temples. Procedure. Layla told him that she could not have children because of her health, but there were no details, only tears and his consolation. And now, do you think Jack persuaded her? His voice broke, revealing the storm inside. David pulled a cigarette out of his pocket, lit the lighter, and took a drag. Smoke floated over the water, mixing with the smell of damp wood. I don't know for sure, but Martha was beside herself. And Layla, she is my daughter. I love her, but she is soft like wax. If Jack put something into her head, she might listen. He can speak beautifully. Alex stood up and walked along the pier, feeling the boards bend under his feet. He stopped at the edge, looking at his reflection blurry, trembling like his faith in Layla. Why didn't you tell me right away? Because I didn't want to be the one who would tear your world to pieces. David exhaled smoke and glanced at him. But at the party I drank too much. I saw them in the corner whispering, laughing, as if I wasn't there, and I broke through. I don't want you to repeat my life, Alex. What do you mean, your life? Alex turned and stepped towards him. David threw the cigarette butt into the water and looked at it heavily, as if weighing every word. I married Martha because I loved her. I was young then, just starting out. Money, business, it's all mine. I worked day and night, built it from scratch. Her father gave me the first push a warehouse for rent, but I did the rest myself. And then she started walking. First with his friends, then with just anyone. I knew. Everyone knew. But I didn't leave. Fool didn't sign the marriage contract. I thought it was nonsense, but now it can take away half of everything that I have created, my business, my warehouses. I've poured my life into this, and she's waiting like a hyena to take what's mine if I file for divorce. And every day it shoves it in my face. Alex felt everything tighten inside him, as if the steering wheel had jammed at altitude. He returned and sat down next to him, looking at David. And you think Layla is the same? No, David shook his head, but a shadow flashed in his eyes. She's not Martha, but she is my daughter, and if Jack got into her head, she might go after him. And you're too good to notice. The float twitched, but Alex didn't even move. He looked at the water, feeling how the truth was drowning in it, slipping out of his hands. I hired a detective, he said quietly. I'll find out everything soon. David whistled and clapped him on the shoulder. Well done, guy. Keep me posted. And listen, purely as a man, don't let her make me out of you. You signed the contract, right? Yes, Alex nodded. This was one of my late father's advice. Clever, David grinned, but the laugh was bitter. So you have a way out, if anything. They sat in silence until the sun rose higher, bathing the lake in gold. The fish didn't bite, but Alex didn't care. He left the pier with a heaviness in his chest and determination in his heart. The days after fishing with David passed slowly, like fuel from a leaky tank. Alex lived on autopilot. He got up, made coffee, went on short flights, and returned to Layla with a smile on duty. But everything was seething inside. David's words were tearing his soul apart. He waited for a call from the detective, checked his phone with manic regularity, but he was silent. On Wednesday morning, Layla left for her ceramics class, a new hobby she picked up a couple of months ago. Alex watched as she packed her bag, chatted about clay pots and some kind of exhibition, and felt suspicion tightening his chest. He nodded, wished her luck, and, as soon as her car left the yard, he rushed to the phone. No messages. He swore under his breath, but then a call rang, an unfamiliar number. Yes, he barked, clutching the phone. Miller, this is Kane. The detective's voice was hoarse, with a slight whistle. There is something. We'll see you in an hour. Where usually. I will. Alex dropped the call, feeling his pulse beating in his temples. He grabbed his jacket and keys and ran out to the pickup. The drive to Kane's office took less than 20 minutes. He drove, ignoring the signs, as if he was in a hurry for an emergency landing. The building greeted him with the same smell of cigarettes and cheap coffee. Alex pushed the door without knocking and entered. Kane sat at a table littered with papers and cigarette butts. He was wearing a wrinkled shirt, and there were shadows under his eyes. It looked like he hadn't slept for a couple of nights. In front of him lay a thin folder and an envelope made of thick paper. He looked up at Alex and nodded towards the chair. "Sit down. I don't like it when people hang over me." Alex sat down, feeling the chair creaking. His hands shook, but he clenched them into fists. "What did you find?" Kane leaned back and tapped his fingers on the table. "Not much yet, but enough to make you think. Your wife and your friend, they don't just talk about the weather." Alex felt his throat go dry. "Speak more clearly." Kane pulled out several photographs from the envelope and threw them on the table. Alex leaned over, peering. In the first photo, Layla and Jack were sitting in a cafe, a small one with stained glass windows 10 miles from home. She laughed, leaning across the table towards him, and he held her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. In the second, they were leaving a motel on the outskirts of town. Jack was carrying her bag, and Layla was looking around, as if checking if anyone was watching. The third was a blur, filmed through a car window. They were kissing while parked outside a warehouse. Alex looked at the pictures, feeling the ground disappear from under his feet. This was not a fantasy, not David's drunken delirium. It was the truth, black and white, with the sharpness of a knife. "When was this?" His voice sounded muffled, as if coming from underwater. "Yesterday, and the day before yesterday," Kane shrugged. "I started watching on Monday. They meet when you're not there. A cafe, a motel, a couple of secluded places. Nothing new under the sun." Alex threw the picture on the table, stood up, and walked around the room. His breathing was heavy, as if after a long climb. He stopped at the window, looking at the cloudy glass behind which the old air conditioner rattled. "What else?" he asked without turning around. "Only this for now." Kane pulled out a cigarette, lit it, releasing smoke into the ceiling. "But I can dig deeper. Phone numbers, accounts, witnesses. If you want to know everything, it will be more expensive." Alex turned and clenched his fists. "Dig. I need everything." Kane nodded and took another drag. "I'll give you a full schedule in a week." Alex took out his wallet and counted out the money, the last cash he kept for a rainy day. "The dark day has arrived." He threw the bills on the table without looking. "Find me evidence. Not just a photo. Something that I can." He stopped, not knowing what to say. "Use? Show? Digest?" "I'll find it." Kane collected the money and put it in a drawer. "You hang in there. People often break down when they see this." Alex didn't answer. He walked out, slamming the door, and got into the pickup truck. His hand shook as he inserted the key into the ignition. He did not go home right away. He turned onto the empty road that led to the river and stopped at the cliff. He went out and lit a cigarette, his third of the day, although he quit 5 years ago. The smoke mixed with the smell of water and pine trees, but did not drown out the pain. He took out his phone and opened the gallery. Photos of Layla, her smile on the beach, her eyes at their wedding. He looked at them and saw another woman, the one who kissed Jack in the car, who laughed with him in the cafe. This was not his Layla, or was his Layla never real? Alex threw the cigarette butt into the river, watching it drown. He didn't want to believe it, still clinging to the idea that this was a mistake, that Kane had messed up something. But the photographs were in my jacket pocket, heavy as stones. First evidence. And he knew, this is just the beginning. When he returned home, Layla was already there. She stood at the stove, frying something with garlic and spices. She turned around, noticing him, and smiled. "Hi, darling. How are things in the city?" "Okay," he lied, throwing the keys on the table. "You're kind of pale," she frowned, stepped towards him, and touched his cheek. "Tired?" Her hand was warm, familiar. But now he saw something different in her, the one who lay in Jack's palm. "Yes," he said, looking away. "I'll go lie down." He went upstairs without waiting for her answer. He closed the bedroom door, fell onto the bed, and stared at the ceiling. The pictures from Kane turned Alex's life into an endless flight through a thunderstorm. He saw the ground, but could not land. They lay in the pocket of his jacket, hidden in the closet, but their shadow fell on every conversation with Layla, every touch. She behaved as if nothing had happened. She made coffee, smiled, and asked about his flights. But now her voice sounded like a lie, and her warmth burned like a hot fuselage. On Friday evening, she announced that she was going to a bachelorette party. A friend from a ceramics class was celebrating her birthday. Alex sat on the couch, clutching a bottle of beer as she got ready. Layla was getting ready to take a shower. "I'll go take a shower, 5 minutes," she said, putting the phone on the table next to her bag. "Then I'll run away right away." She went into the bathroom, leaving behind a light trail of perfumed floral with a hint of vanilla. The door closed, and a second later the water began to rustle. Alex froze, looking at the phone. He was waiting for a chance to take it without suspicion. And here he is. He stood up and walked over to the table, feeling his pulse beating in his temples. I took the phone and entered the password 2510, their anniversary, October 25th. The screen lit up. He opened the messages, scrolling through the chat's girlfriends, Martha, a couple of numbers without names. And here it is, Jack. The last message was sent this afternoon. Alex opened the correspondence, feeling his throat tighten. The beginning was usual. "Are you free today?" "Yes, after the bachelorette party." But further, "Layla, motel, no one bothers." "Jack, I told you, the perfect spot. He won't even flinch." "Layla, sometimes he looks like he can smell, but he's too soft to dig." "Jack, his gentleness is our bonus. Tomorrow at 8 at the warehouse." "Layla, yes, just don't drag it out like last time." Alex froze, looking at the words. Too soft. He, the one who gave her 10 years, who built a life with her, who held her when she cried for her children. He scrolled up. More messages. "Jack, that night there was a fire. Shall we repeat it?" "Layla, when he flies away again, yes, the main thing is to be quiet." He quickly took screenshots every message, every photo, and sent them to his email, erasing traces of what he had sent. Then he put the phone back, exactly as it was. Layla came out of the bathroom a couple of minutes later, wrapped in a towel with wet hair. She smiled when she noticed him. "That's it, I'm ready. I'll change clothes and run away. Are you okay? You look pale." He slowly raised his head, looking at her. Her face was so familiar, soft features, warm eyes. But now he saw another, the one who whispered to Jack, who lied to his face. "I'm just tired," he said, his voice even though everything was boiling inside. "Rest then." She came up and touched his cheek with a damp hand. "Don't be bored without me." She went into the bedroom to change clothes, and 5 minutes later she returned in a black dress with a low neckline. She kissed him on the forehead and slipped out the door, saying, "See you later." Alex remained seated, clutching the bottle of beer so that the glass almost cracked. He didn't say a word. He didn't scream or rush after her. Cain will find more, but these are no longer just suspicions. This is true. And she cut deeper than he expected. Alex went up to the bedroom, collapsed on the bed without undressing, and stared at the ceiling. Sleep did not come. Instead, her words came too soft. "He won't twitch." But somewhere deep inside, a new strength was growing. He was not soft. He's a pilot, and he will find a way to level out this flight, even if he has to crash. She returned in the morning, a little after 3, with the smell of wine and someone else's perfume, muttered something incomprehensible, and fell asleep. Alex looked at her sleeping and felt rage mixed with pain, but he decided to remain silent. Bye. On Saturday morning, Layla came down to the kitchen late, barefoot, wearing his old t-shirt, her hair disheveled. She smiled when she saw him at the coffee table and reached for the coffee machine. "Good morning, honey. Did you sleep well?" Her voice was soft, slightly hoarse. "Okay," he lied, looking into his mug. Everything was boiling inside, but he kept his face. She turned around and leaned against the tabletop. "You're kind of quiet. Tired after flights?" "Maybe," he said, taking a sip. "We need to go to the city." I'll be back soon. Oh, grab some bread if you're at the store, she said, returning to her coffee. He nodded, took the keys, and walked out to the pickup. But instead of the store, he went to the bar where Jack often hung out on Saturdays, sipping beer and chatting with anyone. Alex knew his habits better than he would have liked. He needed to see him to understand how a man whom he considered a brother could so vilely stab a knife into his back. He wasn't going to say anything, not yet. Just look him in the eyes. The bar was almost empty when Alex walked in midday, too early for noise. It smelled of spilled beer and fried onions. Jack sat at the bar, wearing his worn leather jacket, with a bottle of Budweiser in his hand. He turned around, noticing Alex, and grinned the same smile that once seemed friendly. Hey, brother, what destinies? Decided to have a couple of beers? Jack slammed the chair next to him. Alex walked over, sat down, and ordered a beer from the bartender, a bald guy with an anchor tattoo on his neck. He looked at Jack, trying to find in his face at least a hint of guilt, but he saw only the usual impudence. I was just thinking, haven't seen you for a long time, he said, his voice even, although everything inside was trembling. Jack took a sip and nodded. Yes, you are always in the sky, I'm spinning here. How's Layla, by the way? Is everyone making their own pots? Alex squeezed the bottle, feeling the coldness of the glass. He remembered her laugh in the photo, her hand in Jack's. But he answered calmly, yes, everything is the same. What are you doing? Work, bar, girls. Jack shrugged and grinned. Life, brother. We must take it while they give it. Alex nodded, looking at him. How could he sit here, chatting, drinking beer, knowing that he was sleeping with his wife? How could I look him in the eyes after everything? He took a sip to hide how his hands were shaking. You're right, he said, forcing himself to smile. We must take it. They sat for an hour, maybe more. Jack told stories about a client who wanted to buy a Tesla on credit without a job, about a bar fight last week. Alex listened, nodded, laughed in the right places, but inside he asked himself one question. How? How could he and Layla betray him so vilely? Jack looked the same, loud, confident, a little brash. But now Alex saw the mask behind it. Or did it never exist? How are you, brother? Jack patted him on the shoulder. I'm trying, Alex answered, looking into his eyes. Sometimes I think that I trust people too much. Jack froze for a second, but then laughed. You are in vain. The world is a jungle, brother. We have to keep our ears open. Alex nodded, finished his beer, and threw a 10 on the bar. It's time to go home. Layla is waiting. Say hi to her, Jack said, picking up the bottle. And come again, otherwise I'm completely gone. Alex left without answering. I got into the pickup truck and squeezed the steering wheel, feeling the rage and pain fighting inside. Jack was the same, not a hint of guilt, not a hint of shame. How could he? How could she? He didn't say a word about what he knew. Didn't show screenshots, didn't hit him in that grinning face. But every glance of Jack, every laugh of his was now evidence not on paper, but in his soul. When he returned home, Layla was sitting in the living room, leafing through a magazine, drinking coffee. She raised her head and smiled. Hello. Did you bring bread? I forgot, he said, putting the keys on the table. You're kind of strange. She stood up and stepped towards him. Tired? He looked at her familiar eyes, her soft voice. But now he saw another Layla, the one who laughed with Jack, who wrote to him about the motel. Yes, he lied, his voice cold. A Sunday night at the bar with Jack left Alex in limbo, as if he were floating above the ground without landing gear. Layla spent the day in the garden, pruning roses and humming to herself, while he sat on the porch with cold coffee, pretending to read the newspaper. He looked at her movements, her smile, and no longer looked for excuses. The screenshots from her phone and Jack's impudence at the bar were sparks, but he needed full fire. Kane was his last hope. On Monday morning, after a flight to Chicago, the phone rang as soon as he entered the house. Layla was still sleeping. She always slept off after the weekend, citing fatigue. Alex picked up the phone while standing at the kitchen window. Miller, Kane, come. The report is ready. The detective's voice was hoarse, but firm. What's there? Alex asked, feeling his pulse quicken. Everything you wanted. Be here in an hour. Kane hung up the call. Alex glanced at the stairs leading to the bedroom. He could have waited until she woke up to come up with an excuse, but that was unnecessary. He grabbed his jacket and keys and ran out to the pickup. The road to Kane's office took 20 minutes. He drove, overtaking cars, feeling the adrenaline rushing through his temples as if he were about to perform a difficult maneuver. The office greeted him with the smell of cigarette smoke and cheap coffee. Kane sat at a table littered with papers and empty glasses. He was wearing a wrinkled shirt with a ketchup stain, shadows under his eyes, but his gaze was clear. In front of him lay a thick folder and an envelope made of thick paper. He nodded towards Alex on the chair. "Sit down. This is the finale," he said, lighting a cigarette. Alex sat down, feeling the chair creaking. His hands clenched in his lap. "Give me a report," he said, his voice even though everything was boiling inside. Kane opened the folder and pulled out a stack of photographs, printouts, and a couple of sheets of notes. He threw everything on the table, tapping his finger on the pictures. "This is your truth. Full schedule. They are lovers, 100%, he began. "I followed them for 2 weeks. Motel, cafe, warehouse. Everything is documented." Alex took the first photo. Layla and Jack at the Blue Moon Motel. She's lying on the bed, with his shirt unbuttoned halfway. He's sitting next to her, shirtless, his hand on her thigh. The second photo is of a cafe in a neighboring town. They are at a table by the window, her hand on his knee, his fingers intertwined with hers, both laughing. The third is a warehouse on the outskirts. A mattress on the floor, Layla sitting on it, Jack behind her, kissing her neck, her eyes closed. The fourth is the motel again. They leave the room, Jack carries her bag, Layla looks around, as if checking for witnesses. Alex looked at the pictures, feeling the anger flare up in his chest like a fire in an engine. This was not just betrayal, this was their reality, their routine, while he was flying, thinking that he had a family. He squeezed the photo of the motel, the paper crackling. "That's all?" he asked, voice hoarse. "Not everything." Kane pulled out a printout, messages from her cloud. The password was simple, your anniversary plus her name. "Read." Alex took the sheets. There were familiar lines from the screenshots, but also new ones. Jack: "Motel on Friday? Did he fly out?" Layla: "Yes, see you Wednesday. Meet me at 8. Jack: "Love his schedule. Makes our lives easier." Layla: "Sometimes I think he deserves to know. But then it goes away." He threw the sheets of paper onto the table, feeling rage constrict his throat. Deserves to know. But she didn't say anything. She chose to lie. "There's still some." Kane pulled out a piece of paper with notes. "The motel guy knows them. They came for 6 months, always in cash. The roommate heard them. She wanted to change something. He said that everything was perfect anyway. I checked the dates. Motel 3 times a week, cafe once every 2 weeks, warehouse when you were on long flights. This is not an accident. This is a system." Alex stood up, walked around the room, and stopped at the window. Behind the cloudy glass is a parking lot, rusty cars, a gray sky. Anger boiled like fuel before an explosion. He could go home, burst into the bedroom, throw these pictures in Layla's face, scream until his voice breaks. I could find Jack and break his jaw in the same bar. But he clenched his fists, forcing himself to breathe. No, he won't give them this scene. He will plan everything coldly and clearly. "Is that all you have?" he asked, turning to Kane. "Everything you ordered." Kane put out his cigarette. "Photos, messages, dates. They are lovers, fact. My work is finished. If you want more, that's up to you." Alex nodded, took the folder, and put it under his jacket. The anger was hot, but he channeled it in another direction. "How much do I owe?" he asked. "Nothing," Kane shrugged. "You paid the advance. This is the finale. Good luck, guy. You will need it." Alex didn't answer. He walked out, slamming the door, and got into the pickup truck. His hand shook as he inserted the key into the ignition. He did not go home. He turned onto the old road to the river where he had once fished with David. He stopped by the shore, got out, and lit a cigarette, his fifth cigarette in a week, although he had given it up years ago. The smoke mixed with the smell of water and pine trees, but did not drown out the rage. He opened the folder and laid out the pictures on the hood. Motel, cafe, warehouse. Layla and Jack, their hands, their lips, their bodies. He looked at them, feeling his anger turn into a plan. Divorce is the first thing. The marriage contract will leave her with nothing. But Jack, he must pay more. Alex didn't know how yet, but he would find a way. Kane is done, but he has pictures, messages, dates. This is enough to get started. He sat by the river for about an hour until the sun began to set. The photographs lay nearby, the wind ruffled their edges. He thought about how he would return home, how he would look Layla in the eyes, how he would sleep next to her, knowing everything. And he decided he will endure it. He will remain silent until he prepares the documents. A week has passed since Kane handed Alex a folder with photographs, messages, and dates that finally confirmed that Layla and Jack were lovers. For 7 days, he carried this truth within himself, like fuel ready to ignite at the first spark. He slept next to her, ate her food, answered in short phrases, but inside everything was decided. Divorce was not just an option, it was the end of a decade of lies. The prenuptial agreement, which she herself insisted on signing before the wedding, became his shield. She won't get anything. On Monday morning, he got up early, packed a suitcase with clothes and flight documents, and hid Kane's folder in a drawer in the garage. Layla was still sleeping her habit of sleeping off after the weekend gave him time. He called a lawyer, John Kelly, an old friend from flight school who now handled divorces. John's voice on the phone was cheerful and businesslike. "Alex, how old is it? What's happened?" he asked. "I need a divorce. Quickly and without loss," said Alex, standing by the pickup truck with the keys in his hand. "Seriously? Okay, come to the office at 10. Do you have a contract?" John paused. "Are you okay?" "Yes," he lied. "See you." He went into town, leaving Layla a note on the kitchen table. "I'm out on business. I'll be back in the evening." Kelly's office was in a low building overlooking a noisy street. John met him at the entrance, tall, with gray hair at the temples, in a formal suit, but with the same easy smile as in the days of their training. "Tell me," he said, seating Alex in a chair opposite a table littered with folders and coffee cups. Alex pulled the marriage contract out of his bag and threw it on the table. "She cheated on me. For many years. With Jack, my friend. I have evidence, photos, messages. I want a divorce. She won't get anything." John took the contract, flipped through it, and whistled. "For many years? This is serious. The contract is in order the property is divided according to the principle to each his own. The house is yours, the car is yours, her savings are hers. Evidence of treason will only speed things up. Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Alex said, his voice as hard as concrete. John pulled out an application form and began filling it out: name, date of marriage, reason, irreconcilable differences. Alex signed it, feeling the pen shake in his hand with suppressed anger. John certified the documents and put them in a folder. "I'll go to court today. She will receive a notification tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. If he doesn't challenge it, you'll be free in a month. If she challenges, there will be a hearing, but with the evidence, she will lose. Are you ready for this?" "Ready?" Alex nodded. He left the office, got into the pickup truck, but did not go home. He stopped by the river, where he had been often in recent days, and lit up his sixth cigarette in a week. The smoke mixed with the smell of water, and a plan was spinning in my head. He could have waited for the notification, but that wasn't his style. He is a pilot, he faces the storm head-on. When he returned home in the evening, Layla was in the living room, watching a TV series, wrapped in a blanket. She raised her head and smiled. "Hi, darling. You were gone for a long time. How are you?" "We need to talk," he said, throwing the keys on the table, his voice cold. Her smile faltered, She turned off the TV and sat up straighter. About what? You're kind of strange. Alex stood at the door, looking at her. Her face was familiar soft features, warm eyes. But now he saw 7 years of lies behind them: the motel, the cafe, the warehouse. Jack. I filed for divorce, he said, looking into her eyes. Layla froze, her eyes widening. She slowly stood up. The blanket fell to the floor. What? Alex, are you serious? Is it a joke? No joke. He stepped towards the table and put his hands on the back of the chair. I know about you and Jack. 7 years, Layla. Motel, cafe, warehouse. I have photos, messages. You had the procedure done so you wouldn't have children, and you slept with him the whole time. It's over. She turned pale, took a step towards him. Her hands trembled. Alex, wait. It's not what you think. I can explain. Explain what? He interrupted, his voice harsh. How did you lie to me for 7 years? How did you sterilize and blame nature while I was comforting you? How did you sleep with him while I was flying? I saw the pictures. Don't lie. Layla put her hand to her mouth, her eyes filled with tears. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. Please don't do this. I'm confused. You were so far away, always on flights. Jack, he was nearby. It started a long time ago, but I didn't want to lose you. I love you. Alex clenched his fists, feeling her words hit him like turbulence. She pressed on emotions, the same tears, the same voice with which she cried about the children who would not exist. But now he knew the truth. She did it herself, with Jack. Do you love it? He smiled, bitterly, coldly. You loved my life, not me. 7 years, Layla. You chose him, but you held on to me. Stop pretending. She collapsed on the sofa, covering her face with her hands, sobbing. Alex, please. We can fix everything. 10 years is no small thing. I'll do whatever you want. Don't leave me. He looked at her, her tears, her trembling shoulders. Once upon a time, he would have believed her, hugged her, and given her a chance. But not now. Every sob was a lie, every tear was manipulation. You spent 7 years fixing this with Jack, he said, his voice firm. I gave you everything, and you chose it. I submitted the documents. The notification will arrive tomorrow. She raised her head, her face was wet with tears, but anger flashed in her eyes. Do you think it's that simple? Kick me out? What will people say? Your friends, my family? Do you want me to be left with nothing? Contract, he reminded, looking into her eyes. You signed it yourself. You won't get anything. What about people? Let them ask you why you slept with my friend for 7 years. Layla jumped up, her voice breaking into a scream. You are insensitive. Yes, I was wrong, but I'm human. You've never been home, you've never seen me. Jack gave me what you couldn't: attention, warmth. She fell silent, looking at him, her chest heaving. Then she collapsed back onto the sofa and covered her face with her hands. What should I do? Where will I go? She whispered, her voice breaking. To Jack, he said coldly. Or to Martha. I don't care. Pack your things. You have a week. He turned and walked towards the stairs. Her sobs echoed behind him, but he didn't turn around. He went up to the bedroom, closed the door, lay down on the bed without undressing, and stared at the ceiling. The anger was still seething, but now it was mixed with relief. He filed for divorce. Layla tried to play on feelings, but he was adamant, like a pilot who knows that the storm is behind. He lay awake that night, listening to her walking around the house, slamming doors, crying quietly downstairs. In the morning, the notification will come, and she will understand that this is not a bluff, and he will start a new life without her. Filing for divorce left Alex with a mixture of relief and cold determination. Layla spent the night after their conversation downstairs, slamming doors and quietly sobbing, but he did not come down to her. In the morning, he left for a flight to Detroit, leaving her a note. You have a week. All day in the sky, he thought not about her, but about David, the man who first opened his eyes to the truth, who himself lived in a trap because of Martha. If Alex could break free, then David deserved the same. Returning on Tuesday evening, He found the house empty. Layla had left, taking a couple of bags and leaving a note on the table. "I'm at my mother's. We'll talk later." He crumpled the paper, threw it in the trash, and took out his phone. David answered after the second ring, his voice hoarse, but with a hint of surprise. "Alex, why are you calling?" he asked. "This is about you," Alex said, standing at the window, looking at the dark garden. "Come to me tomorrow morning. We need to talk." "To your home?" David chuckled. "Okay, why not? Martha is at the spa until the evening. I'm free. I'll be there at 9. "I'm waiting." Alex dropped the call. He walked into the kitchen, took out a couple of bottles of beer from the refrigerator, and put them on the table. It's not fishing, but beer and conversation within four walls could work better. David was not just a father-in-law, he was a man who was stuck in the same quagmire as Alex until yesterday. Only David did not have a marriage contract, but he had a business that he built from scratch. Alex knew Martha would take half if David didn't find a way out, and he will help him find this way out. On Wednesday morning, David arrived promptly at 9. His Dodge pulled up outside the house, and he got out, wearing a threadbare plaid shirt and cap, with a bottle of whiskey in his hand, apparently just in case. Alex met him at the door and nodded toward the kitchen. "Come in." Beer on the table. David grinned, walked inside, and threw his cap on a chair. "Beer in the morning." "You spoil me, boy," he said, sitting down at the table. Alex took the bottle, opened it, handed it to him, and sat down opposite. "I don't indulge. This is serious." David took a sip, put the bottle on the table, and looked at him carefully. "Spit it out. You didn't just call me. What happened?" Alex looked at him, feeling the words forming in his head. He began, his voice even but firm. "I filed for divorce. Layla and Jack are not 6 months old, David. 7 years. I have photos, messages. She had the procedure done before we even started talking about children. She was with him all this time." David froze, his hand holding the bottle stopping halfway to his mouth. He slowly lowered it and rubbed his neck. 7 years? Damn it. I knew she was hanging out with him, but 7. Jesus, guy. Well done. How did she react? She cried, screamed, blamed me. Alex shrugged. "But I won't back down. The contract is on my side. She won't get anything." David whistled and leaned back in his chair. "This is a blow. I'm proud of you, you know. You didn't let her break you. And I—" He paused, looking at the bottle, then took it and took a long sip. "I'm sitting with Martha like a fool." Alex leaned closer, looking into his eyes. "It's time, David. File for divorce." David chuckled, but there was bitterness in his voice. "It's easy to say. I don't have your contract. I put my life into this, Alex. I don't want to be left with nothing." Alex nodded, feeling his words resonate. "I understand. But you don't have to live like that. You said it yourself, it's a cage. There is a way out. I'll help." "How?" David narrowed his eyes on him. "She will ruin me." "We need a lawyer," Alex said, his voice firm. "Not just a scammer, but someone who knows how to protect yours." "I'll find one. We will prove that the business is your merit, not hers. Her betrayal is also an argument. You can win." David fell silent, looking at him. Then he took the bottle, took another sip, and set it down with a quiet thud. "Are you serious? Do you think this is real?" "Really," Alex looked into his eyes. "You can get out. You shouldn't live with her for the money you earned." David rubbed his face with his hands and exhaled. His gaze became heavier, but a spark flashed in it. "To hell with her. Maybe you're right. I'm tired, Alex. Tired of watching her drag around lovers while I plow. If you can find a lawyer, I'll file." Alex patted him on the shoulder, feeling the tension ease. "I'll find it. Today." They sat for another hour, finishing their beer. David was silent, looking out the window, and Alex thought about the next step. As David stood up to leave, he said, "I'll call you tomorrow. Be ready." "I will," David nodded, his voice becoming firmer. "Thanks, Guy." Alex smiled, sincerely for the first time in a week. "I know." David left, and Alex immediately got down to business. Layla left, the house was empty, and this helped to concentrate. He called John Kelly, his lawyer, and explained the situation. "John, I need someone for David, my father-in-law. Divorcing your wife is a difficult matter. He has a business, but no contract. Martha will take half if we don't find a way out." John chuckled into the phone. "Difficult, but not hopeless. There is one person, Sarah Lynch. She is a shark in such matters, specializing in divorces with property disputes. Do you want her number?" "Come on," Alex said. John dictated the number and added, "Tell me it's from me. She'll take it. Good luck, Alex. Good for you for getting out." "Thank you." Alex dropped the call and immediately dialed Sarah Lynch. She answered after the third ring, her voice sharp and businesslike. "Sarah Lynch. Who is this?" "Alex Miller. From John Kelly. I need a lawyer for my father-in-law, David. Divorcing your wife is a difficult matter. He has a business, but no contract. She can take half." Sarah chuckled, her tone becoming a little softer. "From John, then? Okay, tell me. What kind of business? How many years of marriage? Is there evidence of her cheating?" Alex told everything. Warehouses, trucks, 40 years of marriage, Martha's infidelities, which the whole city knew about. Sarah listened, occasionally asking short questions. "Are there documents for the business? Are there any witnesses to her partying?" When he finished, she said, "There are chances. If the business is registered in his name and we prove her guilt, the court may leave her less than half. Come with him tomorrow at 10. Office on Main Street, 3rd floor. I'll see what can be done." "Thank you," Alex said. "We will." He dropped the call, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. Sarah Lynch sounded like someone who knew her stuff. He called David. "David, I found a lawyer. Sarah Lynch, pro. Tomorrow at 10, we'll go to her. Are you in?" David paused, then exhaled. "In action. Thanks, Guy. See you tomorrow." Alex put down the phone and sat down at the table, looking at the empty bottle of beer. He helped himself, and now he will help David. Layla and Martha ruined their lives, but she and David will get out. Filing for divorce freed Alex from Layla, but left him with a new mission to help David. Layla went to Martha's, leaving the house empty, which gave Alex space to act. He convinced David to file for divorce from Martha, and Sarah Lynch, the lawyer, was waiting for them at 10 on Wednesday morning. But without proof, Martha will take away half of David's business, the warehouses and trucks that he built from scratch. Alex knew evidence was needed, not just rumors about her infidelities, but something significant, and he was going to find it. He started Tuesday morning with coffee, sitting at the kitchen table. Leyland's note, "I'm at Mom's. We'll talk later," lay in the trash, and his thoughts were occupied with David. He took out his phone and dialed Kane, hoping for advice. "Miller? What else?" "I thought we were done." Kane's voice was hoarse, with slight irritation. "We're done with Layla. Now David is her father. Divorce from Martha. She'll take half of his business if we don't find something against her," Alex said, looking out the window at the empty garden. "Martha, right? A walking bitch, the whole city knows." Kane chuckled. "I'm busy, new client. But there is a guy, Tom Reed. Private investigator, specialist in finance and dirty deeds. I'll give you his number. He will find it if there is something to dig for." "Thank you," Alex said. "It's urgent." "Tell me it's from me." Kane dictated the number and hung up the call. Alex immediately dialed Tom Reed. He answered after the first ring. His voice was low and businesslike. "Reed, who is this?" "Alex Miller. From Kane. I need help. Father-in-law's divorce from his wife, Martha. She claims half of his business, warehouses, trucks. No contract. There are suspicions that she is not clean. Can you dig?" Alex asked, clutching his mug. "Martha, I heard about her. A rich family, but a dummy itself." Reed paused. "What does your father-in-law have?" "The business is his. Built from scratch. They have 40 years of marriage. She walked, but he endured. We need something to cut down on her share," Alex explained. "Interesting," Reed chuckled. Prove her fraud or guilt, and the court may give her less. Give me a day. Meet me tomorrow at 9 in front of your lawyer. 500 in advance, the rest after. I agree, said Alex. Find something. He transferred the money through the app, feeling the plan gaining momentum. The day passed in anticipation. He removed traces of Layla from the house, threw out her magazines, and put her forgotten clothes in a box. In the evening, Reed called. Miller, there is news. Come see me, office on 3rd Street, 2nd floor. Now, Reed's voice was sharp. Alex grabbed his jacket and drove off. Reed's office was smaller than Kane's, a cramped room with one window, a desk littered with papers, and an old laptop. Reed sat at the table, balding, wearing a threadbare shirt, holding a mug of black coffee. In front of him lay a folder and a USB flash drive. He nodded towards the chair. Sit down, I dug. Martha is not just a walker. It's dirty, he began, opening the folder. Alex sat up, feeling his pulse quicken. What did you find? Reed pulled out the printouts and threw them on the table. Accounts. Martha has been siphoning money out of David's business for the past 10 years. Front companies Martin Logistics, Northern Transit. She registered them as suppliers and transferred payments for services there. About $200,000 were spent during this time. Here are the statements. Everything is from his accounts, but the signatures are fake. I checked with the bank. She used his seal while he was away on business trips. Alex took the sheets and ran his eyes over the numbers. Dates, amounts, names. It was a blow. Did she steal from him? He asked, his voice shaking with anger. Yes, Reed nodded. And that's not all. She has a lover, a certain Richard Cox, the owner of a car service center. I found their correspondence in the old cloud. She forgot to delete it. They planned to divorce 5 years ago, but she changed her mind when she realized that without forging signatures, she would not get any more. Here's the recording. He inserted the flash drive into the laptop and turned on the audio. Martha's voice is sharp, with a hint of irritation. Rich, I can't leave now. He'll find out about the bills, and I'll be left empty-handed. Then take more while he's blind, answered a man's voice, low and hoarse. We will leave when enough is enough. Give me a couple of years, she said. He won't notice. Alex clenched his fists, looking at the screen. Is this really her? Exactly. Reed pulled out a photo. Here he and Cox were at a motel 3 years ago. The neighbor identified them. And one more thing. She sold one of the old warehouses 2 years ago. The money went into her personal account. The documents are forged, but I found the original through a realtor. David didn't know anything. Alex took a photo Marta and some balding man in an embrace at the door of the room. He threw it onto the table, feeling his rage give way to cold determination. Is this enough? He asked. That's enough, Reed nodded. She doesn't just lose half with this. The court can give her the minimum compensation for the marriage, and that's it. The rest is for your father-in-law. Give it to the lawyer. Alex took the folder and flash drive and put it in his jacket pocket. How much do I owe? Another 500, Reed said, and good luck in court. Alex transferred the money, went out, and got into the pickup truck. He called David. David, I found evidence. Marta stole money from you, forged documents. Tomorrow at 9, I'll see the lawyer. Be ready. Damn it, Guy. Are you serious? David's voice trembled. Okay, I will. The next morning, David arrived at Alex's at 9. He looked tired, but there was a sparkle in his eyes. They sat down at the table. Alex laid out the evidence printouts, photos, a flash drive. She's been withdrawing money for 10 years. 200,000. I sold the warehouse, forged your signature, and she was hanging out with some Cox, he said, looking at David. David took the sheets, his hands shaking. He was silent, leafing through, then exhaled. Bitch. I knew she was walking, but this. I worked hard, and she stole from me. Now we have everything, said Alex. Let's go to Sarah. They arrived at Sarah Lynch's office on Main Street at 10. Sarah, tall, with short dark hair and sharp eyes, met them in an office littered with legal books. She took the folder, looked through the evidence, and listened to the recording. "This is gold," she said, leaning back in her chair. "Financial fraud, forgery, betrayal. We will serve today. The court will give her the minimum, maybe 10% of the business, and that's a stretch. David, are you ready?" "Ready," he nodded, his voice firm. Let him choke. Sarah prepared the documents, David signed them, and she sent them to the court. Martha's notification arrived a day later. She tried to call David, screaming into the phone, but he hung up. The case was scheduled in 2 weeks, an expedited process thanks to the evidence. The trial took place in mid-April. The hall was small, with wooden benches and the smell of old paper. Martha sat opposite, in an expensive suit, with a lawyer, a polished guy with glasses. She looked confident, but when Sarah started laying out printouts, photos, recordings, testimony from the realtor and banker, her face turned pale. Martha's lawyer tried to object, but the judge, an elderly woman with a tired look, cut him off. "Mrs. Martha, your actions are not just treason, but fraud," she said, leafing through the folder. "Mr. David, you built the business on your own. The court awards you 70% of the property and business. She is 30, including marriage. The decision is final." Martha jumped up and shouted something about injustice, but the judge slammed her gavel. David sat silently, looking at her, then turned to Alex. "Thanks, Guy. I'm free." Alex nodded, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. David won not just half, but more. Martha received a blow from which she will not recover. They left the hall, leaving her with the lawyer. On the street, David slapped him on the back. "You pulled me out. Now it's your turn to live," he said. Alex smiled. This was a control blow not only for Martha, but also for the past. Now he could fly further. Martha's trial ended with David's victory, and Alex felt some of the weight that had been weighing on him for months lifted from his shoulders. Layla left, her things disappeared from the house, the divorce was in process, the notice came, and she did not dispute it, knowing that the contract would leave her with nothing. David received his warehouses and trucks, leaving Martha with only a measly 30%. It was the end of an old life, but the beginning of a new one had not yet taken shape. Alex knew. He needed time to collect his thoughts, breathe out, rethink everything. On Friday morning, he received a schedule from the airline, a long flight to Seattle with a layover in Denver, 5 days away from home. Usually, he hated such business trips, but now they seemed like salvation. The empty house, the silence, the smell of her perfume still hovering in the corners, it was oppressive. He packed his flight bag, threw his uniform, documents, and a couple of T-shirts into it and left for the airport without looking back. The flight to Denver went smoothly, clear skies, light winds, passengers sleeping or leafing through magazines. Alex sat in the cockpit, holding the helm, and for the first time in months he felt in place. The sky had been his home longer than the cottage he shared with Layla. The co-pilot, a young guy named Mike, was chatting about his girlfriend, but Alex was only half listening, nodding in the right places. His thoughts were somewhere between the clouds. In Denver, he stayed at a small hotel near the airport, a standard room with a bed, a TV, and a view of the parking lot. After his shower, he went down to the hotel bar, ordered a beer, and sat by the window, looking at the lights of the runway in the distance. He needed solitude, but not the silence of home, but the noise of a foreign place where no one knew his history. Half an hour later, a woman approached the counter, tall, with short brown hair, wearing a flight uniform with the emblem of another airline. She ordered a whiskey and soda, glanced across the room, and noticed him. Alex nodded at her, the professional courtesy of pilots, and she walked over, glass in hand. "Free?" she asked, nodding to the chair opposite. "Yes," he said, slightly surprised. She sat down and put the glass on the table. Her uniform was slightly wrinkled, but her eyes green, lively, looked with interest. "Do you fly?" she asked, nodding at his jacket with the airline logo on it. "Yes, Seattle via Denver." "You?" He took a sip of beer. "Los Angeles via Denver." "Tomorrow morning," she smiled. A slight wrinkle appeared near her eyes. "Caitlin." "Kate." "Alex," he said, feeling her voice warm. with a slight hoarseness pierce his armor. They started talking first about work, about the weather on the routes, about how passengers always complain about turbulence. Kate was older than she looked, about 40, with 10 years of experience in the sky. She talked about her first flight, how she almost landed the Boeing off the runway because of the fog, and laughed, remembering how the instructor yelled into his headphones. Alex found himself smiling, sincerely for the first time in months. "And you?" she asked, taking a sip of whiskey. "What brought you here, besides the flight?" He hesitated, looking into the bottle. A lie would have been easier, but her look open, without judgment, pushed me towards the truth. "Divorce," he said, his voice even. "I submitted it a week ago. Needed air." Kate nodded without looking away. "Understand. I went through this 5 years ago. The husband went to see the secretary. At first it was bad, but then, heaven heals, you know." "I know," he said, feeling her words resonate. "You just have to get over it." They sat for another hour, finishing their second helpings. Kate talked about her teenage son, who lives with her sister in Los Angeles, about how she bought a motorcycle after her divorce and races along the coast. Alex shared a story about Layla briefly, without details, only about 7 years of lies and Jack. Kate listened without interrupting, then said, "You are stronger than you think. Getting out of something like this and not breaking down is not something everyone can do." He shrugged, but her words touched something inside. When the bar began to empty, she finished her whiskey and stood up. "I'm flying in the morning. Maybe we'll see you again in the sky," she said, smiling. "Maybe," he nodded, feeling a slight warmth from her presence. "Give me your number," she added, pulling out her phone. "If you're in Los Angeles, I'll show you the best sunset." He dictated the number, she wrote it down, waved her hand, and left. Alex remained sitting, looking at the empty glass. Kate was no rescue, but she was the first person he'd spoken to without a mask in a long time. This was the beginning not of love, not of romance, but just a step forward. The following days in Seattle were spent in work flights, inspections, reports. He flew, slept in hotels, ate in eateries, but his thoughts no longer revolved around Layla. He thought about David, how he is now free, about a house that needs to be rebuilt to suit himself, and about Kate, her voice, her smile. On Wednesday evening, she wrote, "Sunset in LA is on fire today. Too bad you're not here." He replied, "Next time." It was simple, but for the first time he felt that the future was not empty. When he returned home on Saturday, the house was still empty, but no longer overwhelming. He opened the windows, letting in fresh air, and sat down on the sofa with a beer. The divorce from Layla was finalized, David was free, and Kate appeared on the horizon, not a promise, but a hint of something new. He went on a business trip to collect his thoughts, and it worked. Now he was ready to fly further. A business trip to Seattle gave Alex a break, but when he returned home, he realized that the emptiness of home was still felt not as pain, but as a challenge. The divorce from Layla was almost complete. The notice had arrived, she had not contested the contract, and in a couple of weeks the judge would sign the final papers. David, freed from Martha, called every day, telling how he was rebuilding his life, and thanking Alex for his help. But this new freedom was missing something. He was used to flying alone, but now he didn't want to land in the void. On Saturday morning, a week after his return, he received a text from Kate. "In Denver tomorrow. If you're nearby, let's meet. Coffee or something stronger." Alex smiled, looking at the screen. Their conversation in a hotel bar in Denver remains in my memory, light, without pressure, but with some kind of warm aftertaste. He replied, "I'm flying to Denver tomorrow. Coffee sounds great." Her answer came a minute later. Then at 11, Bean House at the airport. "Don't be late, pilot." The flight to Denver was short, clear skies, light winds, passengers dozing. Alex landed at 10:30, handed in his reports, and drove to the coffee shop. The Bean House was a small place with wooden tables and the smell of freshly ground beans. Kate was already waiting by the window in jeans and a light jacket, without a uniform, with short brown hair, slightly disheveled by the wind. She raised her head, noticing him, and smiled the same warm smile as when they first met. "Punctual," she said, nodding to the chair opposite. "Sit down. I ordered espresso, but I can change it if you're not a fan." "Espresso is fine," he said, sitting down. "How is Los Angeles?" "Sun, traffic jams. My son broke his knee on a skateboard again." She laughed, her green eyes sparkling. "And you? How are you at home?" "Empty," he said, shrugging his shoulders. "The divorce is ending. Father-in-law is free. Now we need to understand what's next." Kate nodded, taking a sip of her coffee. Her gaze was open, without pity, but with understanding. "After my divorce, I lived like a robot for a year. Work, home, son. Then I bought a motorcycle and realized that I was still alive. You need something of your own." "Maybe a motorcycle too," he grinned, feeling how her lightness pierced his armor. They talked for an hour about flights, about the stupid habits of passengers, about how she once almost dropped off a drunk businessman on an emergency runway. Kate was direct, with a sharp sense of humor and a warm energy that pulled rather than pushed. When the coffee was finished, she suggested, "Shall we go for a walk? It's a couple of hours before my flight, but it's boring to sit here." They got out and walked along the street to a small park near the airport. The wind blew leaves along the asphalt, the sun broke through the clouds. Kate talked about her son, Jake, how he wanted to be a pilot like her, and how she was afraid that he had inherited her stubbornness. Alex listened, catching himself that her voice hoarse, lively was becoming familiar, like the noise of engines. "And you?" she asked, stopping at the bench. "Were children in the plans?" He hesitated, looking at the leaves under his feet. "Layla and her lies surfaced in my memory, but they no longer cut me as much. Were 7 years ago. She did the sterilization without telling me. All this time I thought it was nature, but she was with someone else." Kate whistled and sat down on the bench, looking at him. "It's tough. Sorry for asking." "Nothing." He sat down next to him, feeling how her proximity not intrusive, but natural calmed. "Now it's the past. The past teaches, but does not hold," she said, looking at the sky. "After the divorce, I thought that I would never trust anyone again. And then I realized that it's not about them, but about me. You will get there too." He nodded, feeling her words sink in. They sat in silence, looking at the planes taking off in the distance. Then she turned to him and smiled. "You're not as dark as you seem, Alex Miller. There's something real about you." "You too," he said, feeling warmth in his chest for the first time in a long time. When it was time for her flight, they returned to the coffee shop. Kate took the bag and glanced at him. "I'm flying to late tomorrow. If you're in those parts, right, the sunset is still waiting." "All right," he said, and this was not just politeness. She left, waving her hand, and he remained, looking after her. Kate wasn't the salvation, but she was the first person to give him back the feeling that the relationship might not be a lie. It was not an instant feeling, but a slow, like sunrise, return of faith. The following weeks were spent flying Denver, Seattle, Chicago. He wrote to Kate, she answered briefly, but with warmth. "The weather is crap, but the sunsets are still on fire," she wrote from Los Angeles. "Denver is gray, but it holds coffee," he answered. They crossed paths again in Chicago, meeting by chance at the airport. She bought him coffee, he talked about David, she shared how Jake won a skateboard race. It was simple, but every conversation left a mark. One evening, a month after their first meeting, he was sitting at home with a beer, looking at the empty sofa. The divorce from Layla was completed. The judge signed the papers. The house was officially his. David called, thanked us, and told us how he sold his old warehouse and bought a new car. And Kate wrote, "In Denver on Friday. If you're free, give me dinner, not coffee." He replied, "Free. Choose a place." It was not a promise of eternity, but a beginning. Kate, with her husky voice, sharp humor, and warm eyes, gradually restored his faith. Not love like in a fairy tale, but the fact that you can trust, laugh, live next to someone real. He was a pilot accustomed to the skies, but now he was learning to land not alone, but with her. The year flew by like a flight through a clear sky quickly, but with slight turbulence. Layla's divorce was finalized last May. The judge signed the papers a month after filing, and she left empty-handed, as promised in the prenuptial agreement. Alex heard from mutual friends that she lived with Jack, but it no longer bothered him. David won the case against Martha, keeping most of the business, and now enjoyed freedom. And Alex, he rebuilt his life. March found him in a new rhythm. The house has been transformed. Leyland's roses have been replaced by a lawn and a barbecue. The walls have been repainted gray. The furniture has become simpler and more masculine. He had been on long flights Seattle, Los Angeles, sometimes New York, but now he was returning not to avoid, but to a place that felt like his again. David became part of this new life, not just a former father-in-law, but a friend, almost a brother, with whom he went through the storm. On Saturday morning, Alex stood at the barbecue in the yard, lighting the coals. David promised to stop by at 11, their tradition that had developed over the years. Beer, steaks, conversations about life. He arrived in his Dodge, slammed the door, and walked out with a bottle of whiskey in his hand, grinning. "Are you frying meat again, as if I'm not getting enough?" he shouted, striding across the lawn. Alex smiled as he flipped the steak. "You always eat for two. I'm used to it." David plopped down in a lawn chair, opened the whiskey, and poured himself a glass, which Alex had left on the table. "Well, tell me, pilot, how are you? Flights, girls?" He took a sip, looking at him with a slight mockery. Alex threw the steak onto the plate, sat down opposite him, and took the beer. "Flights, as always. Girls. There's one," he said, feeling the words come out easier than a year ago. "Wow," David squinted. "Who is she? Don't be silent. Guy, I'm curious." "Kate," Alex took a sip. "A pilot like me. We met in Denver a year ago. Flies to the West Coast. We communicate when the routes coincide." David whistled and leaned back in his chair. "Pilot, this is serious. How far has it gone?" "We're not in a hurry," Alex said, looking at the coals. "We meet a couple of times a month when I'm in Los Angeles. She's different. Simple, honest. I went through a divorce like I did. Understands." David nodded, his gaze softening. "Fine. How is she, by the way?" "Kate. He flies, rides a motorcycle." Alex smiled. "Last week I called, inviting me to go to the ocean for the weekend. I'm thinking of going." "Go," David slammed the table. "Live, boy. You deserve it." They fell silent, chewing their steaks. The silence was comfortable, like between people who do not need unnecessary words. Over the course of a year, their connection strengthened. Alex helped David get out of his marriage with Martha, and David became his anchor, a person who reminded him that family is not always about blood. They met once every couple of weeks, either at Alex's, then in the bar, or at David's in his new house, purchased after the sale of the old mansion. "How are you?" Alex asked, putting the plate down. "Business, Martha." David took a sip of whiskey and shrugged. "Business is going well. I hired a new manager and relieved myself. Martha, I heard that she and this Cox, her lover, opened some kind of beauty salon. She's already spent half the money they gave her. Let him live, I don't care." "Don't you regret it?" Alex asked, looking at him. "Not for a second," David chuckled. "You pulled me out, boy. I've been a blind fool for 40 years. Now I can breathe." Even the whiskey tasted better. Alex nodded, feeling warm from his words. When David was about to leave, he stood up and patted him on the shoulder. "You did great, Alex. Don't forget me, okay? And invite me to the wedding, if with this, Kate will get there," he said, grinning. "It won't come yet," Alex laughed. "But I'll call you. Drive carefully." David left, and Alex stayed to clear the table. He looked at the empty yard, feeling how the year had changed him. Layla and Jack remained in the past, David became the present, and Kate became a hint of the future. He maintained a relationship with David not out of duty, but because he wanted to. It was a friendship forged in the fire of their shared losses. On Saturday morning, he returned from Seattle, dropped his flight bag at the door, and went to make coffee. The ringing of the doorbell took him by surprise. He was not expecting anyone. Having opened it, he froze. Layla was standing on the threshold. She looked different, shorter hair, dark circles under her eyes, jeans and a sweater instead of her usual dresses. In his hands was a paper bag with something that smelled like baked goods. "Hi, Alex," she said, her voice quiet, with a slight tremble. "Can I come in?" He squeezed the doorknob, feeling the old anger stirring somewhere inside. "For what?" he asked, his voice cold. "Talk." She looked up. Her eyes, the same ones that had once melted him, now seemed dull. "Please." 5 minutes. He wanted to slam the door, but something curiosity, fatigue from the past stopped him. He stepped back, nodding. "Come in." But only for 5 minutes. Layla entered, looking around. The house has changed, no roses, no traces of her. She put the bag on the table and sat down, clasping her hands. "I baked cupcakes." "As you like, with cinnamon," she began, looking at him. "I wanted to apologize." Alex stood at the counter with his arms crossed, not touching the bag. "For what?" "It's late, Layla." She shuddered and looked down. "I know it's late. I ruined everything. But I miss you, Alex. Life with Jack is not the same. He's not you." I realized what I had lost. He smiled, bitterly, coldly. "Do you understand in a year? Comfortable. What, is Jack tired? Or is there not enough money?" Layla raised her head, her eyes filled with tears. "Don't do that. I didn't come for money. I just want us back. We were happy, remember? 10 years is no small thing. I was wrong, but I can change. Give me a chance." Alex stepped towards the table, looking into her eyes. Her tears, her trembling voice, it was familiar. She pressed on emotions, like a year ago when he filed for divorce. But now it didn't work. "Are you happy?" he said, his voice harsh. "I was happy until I found out that you slept with Jack for 7 years. You were not mistaken, Layla. You chose this." She stood up and walked towards him, her hands trembling. "I know what I did, but I loved you, Alex. Jack, he was a mistake, a way to forget loneliness. You were always in the sky. I felt empty. I want to fix everything. We can start again." He stepped back, raising his hand. "Enough. You didn't love me. You loved the house, my salary, my blindness. And Jack wasn't a mistake. He was your plan. 7 years, Layla. Do you think I'll forget?" She covered her face with her hands, sobbing. "Please, I don't know what to do. Jack, he's not what he seemed. I'm alone, Alex. I'm scared." Her tears fell to the floor, but he did not move. Once upon a time, he would have hugged her, consoled her, and believed her. Now he saw only lies, the same ones that were in the motel, in the warehouse, in the cafe. "You made a choice," he said, his voice as hard as concrete. "Live with him. I closed this door a year ago. I have a new life, and you are not in it." Layla raised her head. Her face was wet with tears, but anger flashed in her eyes. "New life? With someone else? Do you think she's better than me? You just threw us out like trash. You threw us out," he snapped. "7 years ago, when I lay with Jack." "Go away, Layla. Your 5 minutes are up." She froze, looking at him, then grabbed the bag of cupcakes and stepped towards the door. At the threshold, she turned around. "You'll be sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I was your family." "Oh no," he said, opening the door. "You were my mistake." She left, slamming the door. Her footsteps died down on the street. Alex closed the lock, returned to the table, sat down, looking at the empty space where the package stood. The anger was still seething, but now it was mixed with relief. She tried to win him back with tears, cupcakes, words about the past. But he was adamant. The door is closed not just for her, but for that entire life. 2 years have passed since he closed the door on Layla, strengthened his friendship with David a year ago, and now his life has taken a new course. Kate, whom he met in a bar in Denver, became not just a woman on the horizon, she became his wife. They married last summer in a small Los Angeles courtroom, without ceremony, with only her sister and David as witnesses. And now, 9 months later, Their home was filled with new meaning. Kate was 8 months pregnant, and her belly bulged under a loose t-shirt like an airplane control wheel. They decided to spend Saturday evening at David's. His cottage became their meeting place, where beer, steaks, and conversations flowed into a cozy routine. Alex stood at the grill in the yard, turning meat, while Kate sat in a lawn chair, sipping lemonade. David left the house with a bottle of whiskey and 2 beer cans, grinning. "A sea of meat again?" he shouted, throwing the cans on the table. "You always eat for 3, Alex retorted, smiling. "I'm used to it." Kate laughed, rubbing her belly. "He is preparing for a grandfather who will steal food from a child." David plopped down in a chair, opened the whiskey, and poured himself a drink. "Grandfather? Who is this?" "I'm still too young to be called that," he said, narrowing his eyes. Alex tossed the steak onto a plate, sat down next to Kate, and grabbed a beer. "No, David, this child is not your grandson," he said, grinning. "And he definitely won't call you Grandpa." Kate chimed in, her eyes sparkling with laughter. "Yes, there won't be any Grandpa David here. Maybe an old curmudgeon, but that's the maximum." David froze, bottle in hand, then leaned back, feigning indignation. "What is this? A conspiracy? You are sitting here mocking me, and by the way, I supported you at the wedding. If you mock me like that, I will pack my things and move in with you. I'll stay in the guest room and steal food every day." Alex laughed, jabbing him with his elbow. "This will be a seizure of territory. You'll have to put locks on the refrigerator." "Castles," David chuckled, taking a sip of whiskey. "I'll hack them faster than you can land your plane. And I will teach the child." Kate shook her head, holding back her laughter. "Oh, David, you'll be the worst influence." Alex picked up his beer and clinked it with Kate's can. "Then we will deport you. No grandfathers with bad habits." They laughed, and the air filled with a lightness that Alex hadn't felt in years. David, with his whiskey and grumbling, became an integral part of their lives, not a father-in-law, not a relative, but a friend who had been through hell with him and now sat here making fun of the future. Kate, with her warm smile and sharp tongue, was his new sky, not just a pilot, but the person who gave him a second chance. "Seriously," David said when the laughter died down, "you did great. I look at you and think, damn, if I had gotten out earlier, maybe I would have sat like this too. Proud of you, Alex. And you, Kate." Alex nodded, feeling warmth in his chest. "Thank you, David. You are part of this too." Kate smiled and put her hand on his. "Yes, you are our main grumbler. It would be boring without you." David chuckled, but there was a sparkle in his eyes. Okay, don't spread yourself. Eat your steaks before I take them away." They sat for a couple more hours, finishing their beer and lemonade until the sun set behind the pine trees. David told stories about his drivers, Kate teased him about his love of whiskey, and Alex looked at them, feeling that this was his new family, not ideal, but real. When they got ready to leave, David walked them to the car and tapped Alex on the shoulder. "Take care of her," he said, nodding at Kate, "and call me when Alex Jr. is born." "Agreed," Alex laughed, getting behind the wheel. They left, leaving David at the cottage. The ride home was quiet. Kate dozed next to her, her hand resting on her stomach. Alex looked at her, at the dark road ahead, and knew. This was the end of an old life and the beginning of a new one, with humor, with friends, with love. And he was ready for this landing. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.